Happy Tuesday of CES. So great to be here as we're going to kick off the research track and talk about our technology trends, bring it to life. We've got an amazing panel of leaders that are going to show what it actually means in the real world across industries. Show of hands, who's first CES this year? Folks, oh, a lot. And in the front row, I like that. The savvy veterans are further back. If you've never been here before, this year there's 4,000 exhibitors, probably 4,500, 4,000 plus. There's 2.5 million square feet of the embodiment of technology change. And it's still the consumer electronics show, but it's broader technology. You see enterprise, you see industrials. And what I love about CES is two things can be true at the same time, dialectics. One, the pace of change is astounding. It's moving so fast. There's so much happening so many different ways. And when you walk through all of the exhibition floor of CES, it brings that to life in different categories. And I'd argue that the fundamentals are still the same, and that nothing you'll see on the floor, nothing as it applies to your individual businesses, to your society, to the way you live, is out of the ordinary, that we haven't seen before. We are building on top of decades of research, decades of investment, and it's exciting, but it also can be overwhelming. And a lot of time I spend with our clients, Deloitte's clients, the execs, the feeling is we're not sure where to start. We're not sure how to apply it to make it matter. So it's less about the what of the technology, that's important. It's the so what, how do we apply it? And then most importantly, it's the now what. Like, what do we do now? How do we invest? How do we make progress? And that's exactly why we do our technology trend report every year. It's the 17th year we've done it. And it's trying to demystify all the things happening into the short list of almost the treasure map of the things that we think really matter, that demand attention. And sometimes that attention can lead to, it doesn't make sense for us to invest right now, that's okay. Doing nothing, if it's deliberate, can be very strategic, but it also helps winnow out a bit of the noise and the hype. I think that's the most important thing. Headlines are exciting. How do we get beyond that into what it really means? So this year we've got our trends report. We've organized it in 5 different areas. There's an overarching theme of AI, no surprise. I think if you walk the floor, the one word you'll see across almost every exhibitor and every industry is going to be AI. I'd argue that in a few years, we'll see less of the emphasis where it's a part of the billboard, the headline, the booth display. It's just embedded in how we're thinking about new features, capabilities, how we unlock new value. Just like 100 years ago, there was probably a lot of booths here saying, now with electricity, now with electrons. That doesn't seem to be much of the push anymore. We're still in that mode of it feels like this exciting moment in time where we have to emphasize it. What we tried to do with the report is say, let's break down the different pieces of AI that have to be true, we have to think about, because as its own big topic, it's a bit ambiguous, amorphous, and it's really hard to take action and move in. So you can download the report. It's been out. I'm going to do a quick flyby of the 5 main themes that we focused on, and then we'll bring the panel out and we'll get to the good stuff as we dig in and make it even more real. This is the teaser and the preview. We're going to go one by one. So first big trend, and one I think you've heard now over 2 days of announcements. This is the move of AI into the physical. And of course, robotics is a big piece of that. And we think about different form factors and how that's going to manifest and all the different industries it's playing into. The equal emphasis is on all the things that have to be true to make physical AI real, including a lot of great potential value in the things like digital twinning and world models that might not manifest right now in the physical. This is about how do we understand, how do we perceive, how do we react, how do we simulate, and eventually how do we take action in the real world in different form factors and modalities. And we're seeing a ton of industrial applications, and that will continue. That's exciting. In fact, we're doing a panel in 3 or 4 hours exactly on that topic. There's a promise of the consumer, there's a promise of the humanoid, and it's becoming closer and closer to reality. My wife, she's a preschool teacher, she's an English major, she's back in what I call Silicon Prairie in Kansas City. She sent me a headline yesterday from the laundry folding robot, and she said, bring that home with you. I can't quite live up to that promise, but that category is exciting. There's so much more happening, and there's a lot of investment needed today to make real. How do we train? How do we reinforce the safety guardrails? The world models have to be behind it. So that's everything in the AI goes physical, which is going to be another $1 trillion industry soon. Second big topic, agentic. And so there's how do we make agentic real? How do we break down what has to be true underneath this promise? The overarching pitch is, what if we just had more outcome chasing, ability to reason more autonomously, get to answers and impact without having it to be narrowly scripted, narrowly focused? That's phenomenal. The hard work of beyond just the agentic models and platforms is you have to have the underlying data, you have to have the underlying systems ready. So when I deal with enterprises, with CIOs and CTOs, this is the point I sometimes get an amen, hallelujah from those leaders, because we're putting an equal emphasis on all the things that have to be true under the covers. That's the hard work we've been talking about for decades and we haven't done enough with. That's your core modernization, your technical debt, your legacy systems, your data cleanse. All of those things have to be in place for agentic to take off, especially multi-agent. Now, the other piece of it, and we're going to hit that on the panel, is what does it mean to the workforce as we have more silicon and carbon working together? How do we have machines and humans working together, and what does that mean from collaboration and culture? And we're just getting to the point where we're thinking about what are the HR equivalent processes for agents and bots? So not enough work's being done on what does it mean to our people as they have to interact more and more with their technical coworkers, quote unquote. And part of the study, we saw 93% of AI investments on the tech, 7% on the culture, the training, the learning, the development. And this is a huge piece of emphasis that we need to close the gap on if we want to see the full potential play out. Third topic, and one very much in the spotlight at CES on AI infrastructure. And this is the large investments being made in the core GPUs and AI chipsets. This is everything in edge, which is an important part of making that physical AI real. And it's the growing realization that for a long time, government and enterprise, computation infrastructure was almost afterthought. It was a commodity. And this doesn't mean there's not a place for cloud in the workflow. Of course there is. But this decision point of, do we go after more and more cloud capability? Where do we make investments in our own data center? Where does edge play? And then how do we think about investing in specialized compute, which is going to unlock the next potential of value? So one of those examples is quantum. We've been in the quantum business at Deloitte for the last 6 years. We're seeing that take off. It doesn't replace everything we've done before. So quantum doesn't make our AI chipsets irrelevant, just like that didn't make our cloud and our traditional data centers irrelevant, but it adds new clubs to the bag. I'm a golfer. It adds new shots we can take, new use cases we can go after. But it's increasingly a CEO-level discussion. And that's the big difference. Where compute and infrastructure was a line item on the infrastructure IT budget, now it's becoming elevated because the decisions we make and the partners we choose have real implications to broader business strategy. Fourth topic, the great rebuild. And this is specifically the implications of everything we're seeing on the technology function. 1% of enterprise tech leaders that we surveyed in this year's report, and this is cross-industry, across the globe, 1% said they weren't in the midst of a pretty fundamental transformation of their technology function. And I've yet to meet the 1%. So if you're in the 1% group, I'd love to meet you after and understand what's going on, because we're in this moment in time where the traditional bias of IT and the tech organization is a back office enabling function is completely turned on its head. 65% of enterprises say they expect their technology organizations to be revenue generating, not just back office efficiency. We're seeing this convergence between information technology, operational technology, product technology. The investments we need to make in the things that have to be true to make all of that potential real are converging, which is exciting, but we don't have the skill set, we don't have the org structure, we don't have the budget to make that real. And so we're in this midst of what does the next generation of technology leader look like? What do the teams have to look like composition-wise? How do we shift a mindset from suppliers and procurement, where the goal is to squeeze every dollar we can on a statement of work, to this idea of who are our strategic partners for co-innovation, co-venturing, and we're only going to see more of that. And then the fifth is around the AI dilemma, which is really the cyber security piece of it. So the two topics I like to bring up, even when people think about tech trends as being the shiny object parade, that core modernization and legacy debt, And this idea of security, privacy, regulatory compliance, which leads into the ethics and morality point, all of those fall into. And the chapter does a nice job of looking at the two sides of, one, the good news, the hero's journey. We're using AI to have a completely different approach and tactics for cyber and security and regulatory and compliance, which is amazing. So the upside is we're embedding embedding AI into our cyber response. The flip side is we're seeing new and new vectors of threat and new avenues of attack because of AI, especially as we move into physical form and critical infrastructure. And so how do we balance the two, and how do we make sure that's a core part of our investment roadmap? So there's a ton of real examples across industry within the report, but we're gonna take 3 leaders, 3 industries, and make this exceptionally real here for the next 30 minutes. So here's a QR code. If you haven't seen, you can also Google. I'll give this a second for folks who want to grab it. It's a long read, but you can do the executive summaries if you want. So without further ado, we've got an amazing panel lined up. First off is Courtney Nundu. She's at SVP at Walmart. We've got Ming Mao, who is at Meta, leading the wearables. And then we've got Paula Goldman from Salesforce, who leads the first ethics and people. Thank you, team. Welcome to can we welcome this amazing panel, please? Thank you. I'm sorry you didn't get to sit here and just watch me prattle on the stage for a few minutes, but welcome. How was CES so far?
It's been great so far.
Yeah?
Exciting year ahead.
Exciting year indeed. I promise we're going to get into and make this real. Paul, I want to start with you because as you think about any technology adoption, and AI and agentic certainly is front and center right now, how do you think about all the things that have to be true and the considerations, especially maybe explain a minute on your role and just how that manifests?
Yeah, well, so I'm Salesforce's Chief Ethical and Humane Use Officer. What does that mean? It means at the end of the day, I'm responsible for making sure that the technology that we ship, particularly the AI, works the way that our customers want it to work and that it's reliable, right? And so we have to think about all the edge cases, but also all the things we don't want it to do and make sure that it doesn't do that. And that's particularly important in the age of AI agents.
Yeah, and as that manifests and switches from headlines and loose ambitions into codified in the platform, when you guys are building the backbone that many enterprises around the world rely on for sales and service, and how does that have to shift from great guidance to actual?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually think this is one of the points that's so important about this moment is that we're used to thinking about trust or governance or ethics as sort of this afterthought or something that you can write a policy about and let it stay there. And when you think about AI agents, actually, trust is your architecture. It's how your product works. It's like you want to know, is your agent pulling the right data and context to get the right answer to your customer question? You want to know, is it going to escalate when it's uncertain or there's a high stakes decision is going to escalate to a person? That is not a policy, right?
Right.
That's like, we have to achieve that by how we build our software, how we shift left with this trust cycle and build a trust layer into our product, how we make sure that we're really precise about the testing and making sure that the context that's being pulled from the data is the correct context, and giving our customers the way to observe that and to test it over and over and over again. So I guess at the bottom of it, it's like, how do you make sure that trust is your architecture and not just a process that you layer on top of technology?
Trust is an architecture. That's a headline from CES. I hope we see many times over. All right, Courtney, so transformation and adaptation are your superpowers. And the font here, I don't know if you can tell, my eyes are terrible. So as I was introducing you all, just SVP of Business Integration and Planning at Walmart, which is an amazing role. Maybe talk a minute about everything that you've seen, because you're right at the intersection of all the things Walmart's doing with cross channels, so many customers every day, and you have a great philosophy that you've said, we're not going to say layering agentic and AI on top of, we're going to actually think about fundamentally what it means and how it can create value and impact. So maybe describe a little bit what you guys are doing and any advice you'd have on how that should manifest.
Yeah, thanks. Well, we think about it from a standpoint of AI is actually core infrastructure. It's not something that is separate and apart. And I think what's also very important is as we think through what we need to build, you said it, we serve 150 million customers a week in the US alone. We can't stop, we can't pause to say we're gonna go do this new technology and this new thing over here.
Yeah.
It has to be fully integrated into how we're serving our customers and how we're working every day. And so we think about it as being core infrastructure. And when we think about the customer, we've taken a dual approach. We want to be at the forefront of the agentic shopping experience. And so we've partnered with OpenAI to envision that and what that looks like. And we have our own assistant, Sparky. So our own shopping assistant, which is a really great and delightful way for our customers to be inspired to discover and shop within Walmart. So we're really looking at it from different perspectives so that we can take multi-approach versus just a singular approach. That's as it relates to our customers, but even as it relates to how we do work is really important. Our founder, Mr. Sam, always said, listen to your associates, they always have the best ideas. And when you think about our stores and what our associates are doing every day interacting with those 150 million customers, they're seeing dynamic, real-time, what works, what doesn't work, how their flow of work needs to work. And so we've created a lot of agents within Walmart to help our associates be as effective and efficient as possible in serving our customers.
I love that. We have a trust survey that we do, and specifically the question was about AI adoption, trust in AI. And the executive team, so we basically did it by, almost you can think about an org chart from Mahogany Row all the way to the front line. The executive team was 70% high trust, bullish and ready to go. It was almost like a log scale as you went out. When it got down to frontline associates and new hires, it was 6.7%. But ironically, like you say, they're the ones most in tune with where the real opportunities are. So the ability to unlock and harness that momentum and have them see it as something that's good for their role, their customer, that's such an amazing piece of your guys' story. All right, Ming, you're literally building devices that are going to reshape how people interact with technology. Who here has tried on any of Meta's smart lens displays? So we have a handful here. I walked by the lab in the Wynn a few times, and there was always a line, so standing room only.
There are 2 labs. Feel free to check it out.
Okay. So when you think about product development, and we talk about, especially in the age of AI, the worst thing we can do is incrementalism. If we take what was always done and we just try to layer on new technology, the best case scenario is going to be plotting progress. The worst case is going to weaponize inefficiency. And you guys are literally creating new products. How do you manage a world where the old playbook isn't just outdated, it might actually hold you back for the real breakthrough as you think about product development? Like, it's fascinating to me.
Yeah, that's a great question. And we're chatting a little bit right before this that building hardware and building wearables typically is a pretty waterfall process. So because it has so much been involved, the engineering, the manufacturing, the go-to-market, the training of the sales associate. Usually there is a lot of clear schedules and a target date that the entire group is marching towards. But in a world where AI is literally transforming how things work, it's a little bit hard to predict when we're going to make it ready. So following the old book of pick a date from the beginning can actually hold you back on making the right decisions and building the right product. For example, one of the AR glasses that we showed about 2 years ago, Orion glasses. When we started the program, we didn't start thinking, hey, we're going to show this at this day on stage. Instead, we're trying to think through what are the guiding principles to make the product right. It has to be like glasses, so it cannot be heavy, it cannot look like goggles, and it has to have a large field of view, and that's uncompromising. Because of that, we had to go and look at what's existing that could work, and we realized that we have to invent a lot of new materials, like using the silicon carbide crystal instead of glass for the lens, And we have to build custom chips in order to make it work in a very small and tiny form factor. So how we pick a date that we're going to show it today on stage, we probably will be held back and not making the right decision and settle on something that actually will compromise the guiding principle. So those are places where you're building generation one and brand new products that, like following the old playbook, may potentially hold you back.
Yeah.
I love the idea that innovation, true innovation, has clarity of purpose, and it's basically first principles, and the laws of physics are a great place to start of where opportunity might be. And your team is actively challenging and rewriting laws of physics on all of our behalf. So thank you. All right. So Paul, I mentioned the trend around agentic, and right in your wheelhouse. And again, my bad vision. So your role at Salesforce, the first time ever, the Chief Ethical and Humane Use Officer. And we've seen this shift. Moderna named their Chief People and Technology Officer, brought HR and tech together because of this issue of AI and humans and the collaboration, and what does that dynamic look like for the future that we're only just scratching at now. So would love your thoughts on all of that, including there's a book coming soon. Manuscript was just finished, so congratulations. Yesterday?
Yesterday, yes.
Yesterday, amazing.
Yes.
So thoughts on how we should think about that?
So I think this question, how do people and AI, how do people and agents work together, is actually one of the most important business questions and one of the most important ethics questions that we have, right? Because we're used to thinking of technology as a tool. All of a sudden, AI agents in the workplace are collaborators.
Yeah.
And we have to effectively answer this question. What do we want them to do? What tasks do we want to reserve for people? And how do we design that collaboration? So, I think you can think about it in different angles. At Salesforce, we like to use the phrase human at the helm. And what does that mean? It means that, AI is going to become increasingly autonomous, but people are always in control. They always have the tools to say what tasks it should do and not do, to course correct, to set the multi-year goals or the multitask goals and so on. And that means that that's at a macro level. At a micro level, it really comes down to questions like, we have a customer, Pandora, makes beautiful jewelry, and they have an agent that helps with customer service, and it deflects about 30% of the questions that come in. The really complicated ones go to humans. Or similarly, the 1-800-Accountant, a company that does basically financial services, financial advice for customers, and every year at tax time, they're totally slammed. And a question that comes in like, is my tax return filed? It's more or less cut and dry and repeatable. Technology can handle that, right? But I have a tax strategy question. For both regulatory and customer success reasons, you want that to go to a human, right? And so it's how do you architect those flows of where does the AI hand off to people? Where do people hand back off to AI? And I think we're just in the baby stages, but as the years go by, that's going to become really the heart of how our businesses run.
And I wonder if anyone has thoughts on the work design piece is so important. Paul, you just beautifully articulate where we are and how that has to be navigated through. Then we have the piece where I think a lot of attention is how do we invest the right ways for our people? And Gertie, as you mentioned, the way that the associates have been a part of the journey at Walmart is a piece of that. So they understand the what and the why and have the trust to engage. And so that's our human workforce, and what do they have to do to reskill, upskill? Do we think about culture and community in that dynamic? And then the piece that with my own Deloitte's human capital team, this is an ongoing debate about how much should we anthropomorphize?
Yeah.
You can Scrabble challenge beyond the actual.
Great word.
Yeah, very close. Applying the same principles to technology workforce, because suddenly the ideas of the HR life cycle have some implication. How do we think about onboarding? How do we think about performance management? If a bot or an agent makes a mistake, is that a technical defect in a ticket that gets raised? Or is that a disciplinary action? And what the hell would that look like if it's a disciplinary action for how we think about retirement, promotion? And that's a whole area that we've just started scratching the implications of, and I think we're right to be questioning it now before we get too ahead of ourselves in the tech deployment, but it feels like that might be the next frontier of what is the future of culture and a people officer with tech being more collaborators and coworkers. I know.
Yeah, I mean, when you raise the question of should we think of them as people, but I think of it a little bit differently. I think the macro question is, how do we integrate these agents as collaborators, right? So yes, it means that we all need to get better at how we delegate and how we actually look at the results. Turns out, right, when you start asking an agent to process, thousands of transactions, and you as a human can't look at every single one of them, you better have a darn good sense not only of what that agent is capable of and not capable of, but also you better have really good testing suite to understand where things are going wrong and to detect anomalies and all that kind of stuff. Ultimately, I think the processes that we're going to develop are not going to be the same as managing a human workforce, right? That doesn't seem appropriate, right? But it does require, I think the question is the right one because it requires new processes, new ways of managing agents, right? And that's, I think, the big business challenge that we have.
Yeah, oh, I love it. Okay, on the engineering front is one specific workforce that's increasingly being affected and I think upskill with AI. Ming, your role and everything you're doing, how do you think about rebuilding your engineering teams? Think back when you started with Meta to today, different skill sets, different approaches. How do you keep the team motivated, but also how has it evolved, especially as you're moving towards a moving finish line in the true north product categories that you're pursuing?
Yeah, this is a great question. I was actually thinking about what Paula is saying. Even before we get to how we build newer things, having AI be a toolkit for our engineering team has been really transformative. We are setting goals on how can we actually enable AI to do more so that we better test coverage and even doing the things that we could not be covering for a lot of the edge cases, stress testing and things like that. This has been a really good tool for the team. But to your question about how we wanted to, when we're building something that's new, you might be discover solutions along the way that actually works better than the path you're on. How can we define the process to make it work differently? It's quite a different muscle compared to building something that is going to work. You just need to productizing it. There are a few tools we've been using that I find useful. The first one is called an NTI process, so new technology introduction, where it started off a very phased approach. First, starting defining user value and defining what suite of technology may potentially work, and then going into down selecting, develop the product, meeting the KPI, and then putting it back into the process of the product context to see if it's actually reaching the user value. Having those phased approach help de-risk along the way without needing to go one step, get to the very end, because that way we could actually be on the wrong path without really explore. Another tool that's useful is what we call time machine. This is when you are prototyping, understanding the capability of the new technology without being in the final form factor. For example, when we're prototyping glasses, we actually used a lot of the VR headset, but mount a see-through glasses on top of the headset. This is useful before we can actually miniaturize the components because that takes a long time to develop.
Sure.
So using those was able to let us understand what the end state would look like so that we could stay true to the ground vision before we can actually hold the physical thing in our hand.
I wish we had a slideshow to cue right now of all the iterations over time. It would be fun to see, but...
Exactly. We actually have the photos when we show the AR glasses where the first generation started with a big kind of headset, a big compute pack that's on the back. That's all the processing that's needed. And over time, it gets smaller and smaller and eventually get to a pair of glasses. And people always ask, how do you make that happen in 6 months? Because that was in between 2 generations. We're like, no, that was like all the work over years, just like come together at the end. So having those tools help us do pathfinding. And it's a little bit of an art and science. Art in a way that until you see the form factor, you have to use a little bit of imagination. If the thing on the prototype time machine is a little bit lighter, how would that transform my experience? But it has to be a science in the way that we cannot really, it has to mimic the final latency or like the capability so that you are not doing something that's completely frictional.
Yeah.
So a little bit of those tools was helpful. But then to your question about keeping the team motivated, that's where like a little bit of a different goal setting could be helpful, so that we anchor the team on the final goal instead of a specific path. Because if we're married to a specific path, the minute you pivot, it's gonna feel churn, even if that path is better.
And it sounds like with some structured experimentation and some license to have the team, I'd say geek out, that's not the right term, but to be able to explore new technology within a way that's measurable.
Setting like kind of treating learning as a precious outcome of this process will make it way easier for us to like thinking through how bake in the expectation of change is always needed, because we're discovering something that's brand new that no one have done before.
If I can just triangulate between something you said and something you said, I think it's easy to listen to. What you just said is totally beautiful. It's really easy to listen to it and think like, oh, that's what teams developing really cutting edge hard tech need to do. It's actually what all of us, no matter what we're doing, no matter what our function is, in this new world need to do that. And we need to be sort of as a mindset for all of our employees across the workplace. So even thinking about like Walmart associates who are closest to what's going on, and we're now in this world where you don't know when you implement an AI agent exactly how it's going to work. You have to learn by doing, and when you do that, you figure out like, oh, there are places where we want it not to answer this question. Let's take this out of its task list or whatnot. So I think it's that kind of iterative mindset and involving people in it rather than coming down from on high and saying, this is our goal, we're going to achieve it by this date. That's, I think, that's what's required for this technology transformation.
The mandate for the destination in broad strokes, but then the empowerment at the micro to be able to get there.
Yeah.
All right, Courtney. By the way, I don't think it's past the statute of limitations for congrats on the Vizio acquisition and everything that was. I'm not sure if everyone knows exactly what the scale of that represents for Walmart, but it'd be interesting maybe to shine a light on a bit of what that was, but then also this point of how do we think about the investments we need in enterprise capabilities, integration, and in that case, it actually sped broader transformation, where that complex of a deal and everything within it, most organizations that might have slowed you down, and it was the opposite. Can you break that? Maybe share a little bit what it was, what it is, and then your experience and what others might be able to learn from how to do it world class like you did.
Thank you. So a year now is gone by with Vizio being part of the Walmart family, and it's been an incredible year. We were very focused on bringing together the best of hardware, software, and data that Vizio had, and just using Walmart as an asset to elevate that and bring that together and bring it to customers. And so over this last year, we have just been through so much in a very fast way, but in a very great way. And I think it all comes back to clarity and focus. We wanted to bring the best to customers, deliver superior customer experience, and do that in their homes, in their living rooms with the Vizio operating system. And so that's what we set out to do. And over the last year, we've really elevated the operating system through our Walmart customer channels. And it's a great alignment of Vizio and what they bring to customers and what we as Walmart do in terms of serving our customers. And so it was a wonderful marriage. What I would say is, it's not a point in time. So kind of to your, what can you learn from it? An acquisition happens, but that's a moment in time. That's not what defines success. It's how do you continually integrate, but not do it also in a way that's integration for the sake of integration. It's not building a product or using tech for the sake of it. It's very intentional. And so from the get-go, we were very focused and we stayed on that path. And I think that's what's delivered such great results for us this last year, with the operating system continuing to grow, particularly through our annual event and holiday. And we're just absolutely delighted to be able to keep moving down the path.
And that link into core business operations too. So not sacrificing the customer experience, which I know is prime directive, but also having it
Customer
embedded.
first.
Yeah, always.
Always. It's part of our cheer at Walmart, and we firmly believe it. And what's great is Vizio has the same mindset. It's customer first. And so everything we've done has been very intentional and focused on what's best for the customer experience. How do we bring together the best entertainment, commerce, and utility experience into US living rooms, in homes, et cetera. And that's what we're focused on. And I think by really making sure that we're principled in what we're doing, it allows us to have a North Star to say, that's very interesting, but that actually doesn't serve the customer, so let's park that, focus on this.
And I see it in my opening, this convergence between the traditional back office of IT, the operational pieces of OT, and the product tech. This is almost a perfect example to me of how those three, when they're done right, can be very complementary, and the flywheel effects.
Well, I think in terms of growth, like when I think about this acquisition and what it meant for Walmart, I oftentimes say to the team, we're building the future together.
Right.
And that's a very exciting place to be in. It's not an acquisition for other purposes of just inorganic growth or cost synergy. And I think that also has made it very easy to move forward with in a productive way, because we're growing together, and that allows for so much more in the future of what we do.
Okay, we're coming to close. We're going to do a speed dating. The closing chapter of Tech Trends has a thing called Signals, which is looking a little bit further out, and we're here at CES and the celebration of all things. If you have something that you're particularly excited about, you've seen or you've heard about at CES, maybe call it out. But I think more important to this group would be, how do you as leaders figure out how to get the signal from the noise, given there's so much change, there's so much hype? Any practical advice, but you can also do something you're excited about for fun. Speed round. Paul, let's start.
I guess I want to comment on just like the reams of conversation about AI agents, and there's a ton of hype. And if you want to cut through it, how I think about it is two key questions. One, does this technology help me access insights and my own data, right? Like that came through totally clearly in the report.
Yeah.
That's the key question. And the second is, does it help me keep a human at the helm? And those are kind of the two key questions as you're implementing agents, and everything else to me is noise.
And probably you could apply that Mad Lib style, another noun of emerging tech that will come soon, would apply those same rules, principles.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Meg?
It's very noisy. I often hear a lot of, oh, this wouldn't work. Or, oh, this is a different approach that will work better. What I find useful is kind of going back to the first principle on, do we get the right signal about the world? And is this technology, even if working better, is it reaching the end goal, or is it more of a shortcut? So that you can delineate between something that will eventually fade out or something that's going to be here to stick. So kind of like looking through what's the surface of it, understanding fundamentally first principle, looking at the laws of physics, whether that work or not, can help us like screen out through the noise and find something that's a little bit more durable and sticky.
Building on that, I would say discipline and adaptability. So the discipline part is not being overly rigid. That's where adaptability comes in, and having to test and learn. And we do a lot of that. But I think there is an element of being disciplined in all the noise, because otherwise it can be overwhelming and you don't really know where to pull from. But being willing to change and listen and have a different outcome than what maybe you had originally expected is important, but continuing to refine, like
Yeah.
being really thoughtful about it.
I love that. My all-time favorite quote is Lorne Michaels from Saturday Night Live. And it's, we don't go on because we're ready. We go on because it's 11:30, right? Live from New York and Saturday Night, let's go. And I think there's a potential trap of there's so much technology. Let's just wait and see. Let's wait until the next model. Let's wait until the next RAV. Let's wait until the next press release. And I think the thing we all, and you guys have done beautifully across Walmart, Meta, and Salesforce, is there's discipline, but there's also a bias towards progress and action. And if we wait and see, the Beach Boys said it well, hope and wish and pray it might come true. This isn't the time for wouldn't it be nice, it's time for bold action. And you all are leading the way. So thank you. Please thank our panel for being here. Thank you all. Have an amazing remainder of CES, and we'll see you on the floor. All right.
Thank you, guys.